To my knowledge, this statue is to commemorate any university students who fought in the Civil War on the Confederate side. That's most of what I know. I know that around here we call him Silent Sam.
This statue is known as Silent Sam. Just a monument to the Confederate soldiers. A lot of universities in the South had things like this. There is a tall tale about him here on campus. The reason that he's called Silent Sam supposedly is that if a virgin walks by, he fires his gun. He never fires his gun. So we can leave that alone with what it supposedly means about the people here on campus.
Do I think the statue should be here? No, I think it should be taken down, especially because this is a new time. This is when, I guess, like different people, like for like different colors, different backgrounds, they're able to come together. They're able to unite with each other. I mean, it really doesn't reflect well for this campus, and I feel like it should be taken down.
I see no reason why the statue should be taken down. It's a piece of history, and it's part of the university, and I feel like that's enough.
This monument in particular is like the real Silent Sam, or it's like called the real Silent Sam Memorial. And part of what I know about it is like part of the reason it was built was to kind of promote white supremacist like ideologies. And so I don't really think having this monument necessarily represents like me or like the diverse student body that we have in Carolina.
That's the question, isn't it? Is it a historical monument, or is it a sign of racial oppression? This particular sculpture cost around $7,500 and was erected June 2nd, 1913. It was a joint venture by the university's alumni and the North Carolina chapter of the United Daughters of the Confederacy to honor those alumni from the University of North Carolina who fought in the American Civil War.
Silent Sam was not modeled after any specific University of North Carolina student who served in the Confederacy during the Civil War. Instead, the sculptor, who was a Canadian, used a Massachusetts model, and it was forged in Rhode Island. So there's nothing Southern about it.
Silent Sam, in many respects, is portrayed in quite a representative fashion for a common soldier in the Confederate armies. The hat and the tunic and pants, perhaps early in the war, before those bedraggled veterans in 1864 and 1865. But the thing that Wilson intentionally, unintentionally did, I think to some degree intentionally, was that our war memorial, Silent Sam, does not have a cartridge box. In that cartridge box would be perhaps 40 rounds of ammunition from which he would draw those rounds and fire his rifled musket. Wilson did not give Silent Sam any ammunition, no cartridge box. That is the most striking element of what separates this war memorial, this common soldier, from another common soldier who actually participated in the war. Perhaps that's why we call him Silent Sam. John Wilson intended for the front of Silent Sam a heroic-looking lady to represent the state of North Carolina with hand resting on shoulder of a student, reluctantly, sadly asking that this student give up for a time being the pursuit of education, letters, and take up arms to defend the state of North Carolina.
Well, the physical scene was of a crowd gathered around for the dedication of the monument, and university undergraduates were in attendance, along with the university faculty and the university president. A number of speeches, but particularly a speech by Julian Carr, who was a noted local businessman, entrepreneur, industrialist, Confederate veteran, and leading, what would be, potentate in the United Confederate Veterans in the state. And he gave a speech in which he framed the significance of the Civil War, of the Confederacy, and clarified what the meaning of this statue to the University of North Carolina students who had served in the Confederacy.
Well, of course, what he's talking about is the contribution of Confederate soldiers to the Ku Klux Klan in reversing the results, or limiting, I should say, the results of the Civil War and restoring all-white democratic rule. Another interesting thing about the dedication of Silent Sam is that when Julian Shakespeare Carr made his reference to saving the Anglo-Saxon race, he transitioned immediately to a personal reminiscence of something that he said happened to him right after the war ended and the campus was occupied by about 100 Union soldiers. He says in his speech, 100 yards from where we stand, less than 90 days perhaps after my return from Appomattox, I horsewhipped a Negro wench until her skirts hung in shreds, because upon the streets of this quiet village she had publicly insulted and maligned a Southern lady. Well, there you go. He's boasting about an act of violent brutality against a woman, a black woman, supposedly in defense of white womanhood. So those people who say that Silent Sam was put up with the intention of glorifying white supremacy are absolutely right. That was one of the intentions of the people who built the statue.
So in the larger national context, Woodrow Wilson had been elected in the fall of 1912, had taken office in 1913, and had brought with him white Southern politicians who filled out important offices in his cabinet and important offices in the federal government. And I think there was a sense that, as opposed to being defensive, as the South had been in the late 19th century, there was almost a kind of white Southern triumphalism. Carr was laying out a historical vision of how it was that a region that had suffered one of the great catastrophic military defeats of modern history was now somehow vindicated. I think it really became a controversial monument during the 1960s as a result of the transformation of the demography of the UNC student body. When it first became explicitly controversial is probably after the assassination of Martin Luther King, when it was defaced with red paint, and subsequent to that, it became a routine organizing site or routine site for demonstrations dealing with race relations on the campus or in the town of Chapel Hill, or more broadly in the United States. I certainly have qualms about removing the statue because that won't change the history, that won't erase what Julian Carr said in 1913. I would like to see Silent Sam remain as a historical reminder, as monuments are intended to do, but I would like to see Silent Sam constantly reinterpreted, and for the university to actually encourage the reinterpretation of Silent Sam by turning the space around Silent Sam into a de facto performance space so that Silent Sam provokes kind of ongoing, constructive, channeled dialogue about what it was that Silent Sam represented to Julian Carr's generation and what Silent Sam might represent to us.